I'm Carrie Peters, a recognized thought leader in the Microsoft Dynamics community and a Microsoft MVP for business applications. Welcome to the Get Your New View podcast. Keep listening to learn how we work with frustrated Business Central and NAV users who struggle to use their system and find the answers that they need. We teach them to truly understand how the system can support their business processes to make immediate and lasting improvements. As a result, they get more done in less time, make better business decisions, and even love their system. In this next season of the Get Your New View podcast, I'd like you to meet even more members of our New View team who have brought examples of their favorite projects they've worked on with our customers to create efficiencies, utilize automation, and simply use even more of the features of their Business Central software. Welcome, everybody. We have invited today Kim Congleton, our Chief Operating Officer, and Belinda Allen to talk with us today specifically about projects that we can do for customers or for people who are looking to work with us related to Power BI. And they have some really exciting stories to tell about things that they have done in the past and things that just really get them excited to be able to do for you to help you to improve your business. So I'm going to call on Kim first. Kim, you brought a story about a customer you worked with recently with a Power BI project. Why don't you share with listeners what happened in that project?
Yeah, so I feel like this customer is like a lot of customers that have started using Power BI. Like it's new, it's exciting, and you'll have multiple users go out and start creating a bunch of reports. And the next thing you know, it's like I have 50 or 60 reports. They're all pointing to different data sets. I'm getting sales numbers that are different because this person used maybe the sales line table and this person used like the GL tables. So all of those things can lead to some inconsistencies in data. There's not one source of the truth. And before you know it, you're like, oh my gosh, what do I do? Like I have all this stuff, I have all this data, it's great data, but it's not doing what I need it to do. And that's where we can kind of help people take a step back and say, what are the reports we really need? What's the true data set that we need to build that can actually be used to populate all these different reports so that we're getting the same numbers? The accountants always like that we get the same numbers, doing the same calculations, and we kind of then have one source of the truth for those numbers that maybe are financial in nature.
I love that. So bringing things from chaos to the point where somebody from your finance team is going to be able to rely on those reports to tie to the GL, right? That's always the trigger for me. If it ties to the GL, I'm happy. Yes. Belinda, what about you? What kind of stories have you brought to share with us about how we do this for customers?
Well, and adding with what Kim was talking about, there's a couple of things that we have going on when we're dealing with customers. And one of them is they have recreated their data model for Power BI multiple times. And so many people, there's so many sources to learn Power BI from that are free, but they're all fragmented. And so you end up with this hodgepodge mess and you've missed a lot of important fundamentals. So Kim and I spend a lot of time focusing on continually learning new things that pop in so that those fundamentals can be set. So helping our customers build upon that. So that single source, as Kim was talking about, is so important because if you add something new in, the foundation is there. A great example of this is a customer we worked with who had multiple companies in different currencies. And being able to build upon that was not challenging in building the data model. It was just something we had to know because they said, oh, by the way, we always wanted to be in the US dollar. Not a problem. And then as we were talking with them, they're like, well, occasionally they want to see it in euro. Well, of course they do. That's their currency. Of course they want to see it in euro. So why don't we make it so that everything can be seen in euro? So you could do fair comparisons and they could actually compare. So being able to put those kinds of techniques in place so that they only have to put it in one spot and it's there for everything. And then by the way we built it out, we had future currencies able to be populated as well. And they said, oh, that's great because we know we're going to be adding these 3 currencies in the future. And we're like, well, you don't have to do anything. Everything's all set in place. So that's another big one for us. Uh, some of these new features that I talked about, like one that not enough people even know about that is so incredibly important, is personalization. And this gives the end users the ability to personalize or alter the visuals that they're seeing on the report in the Power BI service. And even if it's a Power BI app, which is what I told you, because it gets rid of all the noise of the workspace, but this personalization enables someone to take a report that might be in a clustered column chart and change it to a pie chart or change it to a map. And so many end users say, I want to build, I want to build, I want to build. And what they really want to do is just be able to set up their own visuals. A good part, probably 75 to 80% of building a report in Power BI has to do with getting the data model exactly right. So if we can get the data model in place, separated in its own spot, then anyone could, with the rights, of course, and a little bit of experience, could actually become a designer and build a report. But then any user can change the report and personalize it to the way they want to see it. And that's a really big deal.
Yeah, that is a big deal.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times I've seen reporting projects stall because people don't understand how much work needs to go into that data. And on top of it, not everybody is a report designer. That's a very specific set of skills to figure out how we can put those basics together and really make something come out of it that makes sense. Because a lot of times what I see is a big data dump that's not a whole lot better than what we started with. So I love how that comes together, and the ability to personalize on top of that is just fantastic.
So we have a lot of conversations, Kim and I, about what's the most efficient way to do things. And that's not something a lot of end users would think about. For example, on an invoice, if we're looking at invoices, do we put the header and all the lines together on a single query, or do we separate them out? So we spend a lot of time focusing on that users just don't focus on. And so it's important to get them done right.
Yeah. One thing I really have enjoyed observing about the projects you guys work on is the incredible momentum that you guys get with these projects. I've talked with lots of folks where they say, well, we want to use Power BI at some point, but we're not quite sure what we want to have in the report. So we're going to wait for such and such a department to tell us what they want, and then we'll build it, right? And what does everybody do? Both of those groups just end up waiting for a report definition to happen. So the design work that you guys do with Power BI really infuses momentum and speed into that project to just get it done. And I don't see this gigantic delay of starting, waiting for those definitions to happen. You guys have done this often enough where you've got a good idea of what other companies are doing and what's working and what's not working, and you kind of skip over those beginning steps because of the level of experience that you have. Very good. One thing that you told me about, Belinda, before was how we can focus on functionality with Power BI. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, there's a lot of features inside of ERP systems like Business Central that a lot of people just don't embrace. And usually they don't embrace them because they feel like it's just a little extra work to embrace it. And a good example of this would be AP invoices. So if you have an AP invoice with a vendor that you have a dispute with on that invoice, but you don't want to stop working with the vendor. You just don't want to pay that invoice until you deal with this dispute. So the feature to be able to put that one invoice on hold so you can continue everything else until you get it resolved. Now, that's a really cool feature, but you have to manage that feature. You have to be able to know that invoice is on hold, and you have to deal with it. So what a lot of people, they do is they just don't get in the system. So they just have it off to the side. And the problem with that is if you're looking at ongoing information, or if it happens to cross fiscal periods, you've lost that expense. So that's not a good move. Just stacking it on your desk is never a good move, especially as current as data is today. So if you were to build something that helps you monitor, hey, what's on hold? So what are we doing? Who's on hold? Or do we have customers on hold? So being able to embrace some of the functionality in applications like that is just so much better than just stacking it up on your desk and saying, hey, we'll key it in when we get this resolved, because that's not good for anybody. It's not good for budgeting, especially for department heads when they're trying to compare to budget. And it's certainly not good for anybody who's trying to evaluate where the business stands at this particular point in time.
Yeah, I love that you figured out how to use a traditional reporting system
Mm-hmm.
for that kind of functionality, and especially from a finance perspective, the controls that puts in place. I love that. That's fantastic.
Yeah, nobody wants people to stack their work up on their desk.
Correct.
Data is too real and too now. I use the phrase operational financials a lot. These would be looking at your accounting data for everything that's in the system right now, with the understanding, hey, we do not have month-end entries done. We haven't done accruals. We haven't done adjustments. But this is where it stands right now. So we know everything that is in the system right now. So you just have to know everything is not polished with a bow until you get that full blessing from the CFO or from the controller. But it can help a lot when you're trying to compare to budgets. If it's stuck on somebody's desk, then you don't know about it, and you might end up overspending.
Yeah, and you've got great advance notice for decision making. That's fantastic.
Right.
So when you think about working with a customer for the first time on these kind of projects, what can customers do to prepare or become ready for this kind of project? What's the thing? And Kim, I'll ask you to weigh in first. What are the things that customers can start to think about as they're putting this new project together? Because I think for a lot of people, it's a little overwhelming. If they don't have those skills and they haven't worked with somebody before, they don't know where to start. So how can we help them on where to start?
I think the first thing and the most important thing is to always review your reports, right? What are the reports you're truly using, and not just those ones that you're looking at because they look pretty. So short story, I was actually at an end user, early on in my career. Somebody handed me this report and they're like, hey, the president of the company looks at this every month. He's got to have it. But it takes like 8 hours to create this report, right? And I'm like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? 8 hours? So needless to say, this is back in the SQL days and all of that type of stuff, way before Power BI. But anyway, short. I figured out how to do it. I did it in I cut it down in like half the time. And I sent it to the president, and I noticed he never opened my email. And so the next month I did the same thing. I sent it, he never opened it. I'm like, you know what? I'm just not going to send it. So I stopped sending it. And nobody called me and said, hey, where's my report? So I think that's one of the critical things that you want to do before you even start this is, if I have 300 reports in an organization, which ones am I truly using? And which ones are really being used to make a decision? And then once you narrow down that, then you kind of say, okay, well, I have this set of 10 reports for sales. I have maybe 15 for purchasing. And then maybe I have, 20 over here in finance. And how much of them are similar? Maybe I've got a finance report that really, if I just added one field to, would be the same for sales and the same for purchasing. So kind of saying, okay, which reports now can I combine? And trying to get that down to like a manageable number. And by manageable number, I would say I like to see anywhere, and Belinda, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but anywhere from like 10 to 20 reports for a company to use. Because I really think more than that, like for operational and for financial and at like kind of a leadership level, right? That you're kind of seeing where your company is. I think you have to kind of start there, but narrow that down, figure out where it's pulling from. And then it's easier to start the discussion and say, okay, let's start with this first pass. We can expand from there. There's nothing that says we have to start with it, like this is all we're going to ever create. But I guarantee you, by doing that, we're going to get a pretty good data set or two. Maybe we need two. Maybe we need one for sales and one for purchase. But we're going to get a pretty good data set, an idea of what that data set needs to be. And from there, it's pretty easy to now come out, take another step back and say, okay, if I had two more fields to this data set, now I can get this reports. So it's really kind of saying, don't overwhelm yourself with trying to capture everything under the sun. Really focus in and pick a first place to start. Even if it's only like 3 reports, let's just start there. Otherwise, you'll never start, and you'll never gain any momentum if you try and recreate the wheel for all 300 reports.
Yep. Yeah, that's huge. Fantastic point, Kim. Belinda, how is it that you work with customers on projects like this? I know that you use a number of different methods to get people going and help them to either learn how to do it themselves or to walk them through the process gradually so it's not overwhelming. So what kind of things do you do to help with that?
Well, I have a couple of standard things. So there are some roles where it doesn't matter. Their reports could vary from customer to customer, but for the most part, they want to see the same thing. So if you're talking with a controller, they want to know about cash, bar none, and that's end of story. Same with the CFO. Other people, not so much. So their focus is cash. So I have some particular starting points, but I also like to ask them about where they're spending their time, like what's taking them so long. So when they're looking at cash, what are all the obstacles that's making it take longer for them than they feel like it should be? And when you start evaluating problems like that, you're going to easily end up figuring out, hey, there's a lot of things that we need to do to focus on. And then based off what Kim said, I mean, I loved her coming down to an actual number of reports. It's funny because really and truly, there's a lot of businesses that are of NAV and Business Central size users that probably operate really and truly on 10 or so reports. I mean, when it comes down to it. And if you look at those 10 or so reports, it's usually only maybe 4 different data sources that they're trying to do. So if you start thinking about other people in the company, then how do we extend this report and envelop for them? Then you're really getting into something that's going to give them an aha moment. But I like to focus on, hey, my job is to make your job easier. I make your job easier and I save you time. You're going to be better at it. You're going to have better information, and decisions are going to be much more accurate. So what can I do besides answer your telephone that's going to make your job easier? And that's they'll usually say something that you have to dig in and find what they really mean. Like if they say, oh, I want, if they start talking about something on approving batches, let's say, or transactions, the problem isn't necessarily the approval process. Instead, it has to do with how do I review what it is I need to approve? So that's usually the underlying thing. So you have to just kind of do a little bit of digging and have some conversations with them about it. And if they are unsure what they want to see, show them a couple things. You'll tell by enthusiasm right away where you're hitting that high point, and then that's what you could focus on.
Fantastic. That's great. So one thing that we often talk about with any of these type of projects is certainly how we save people time and how we save people money and how that translates into return on investment. But the thing I really like to focus on is how do we create opportunities for things that they can do once they've already accomplished that, right? So they've already accomplished their main goal, and yes, that saved them time, that saved them money. But Kim, can you think of some examples where we've created specific opportunities for something that the company didn't think that they were ready to go to? We've gotten this first step done, and how do they move on to that next step?
I think, one of the great things that in working with Belinda is we had a client that we were working on, and they had an end user, we'll call her Mo. And Mo had some Power BI experience, and they wanted to make sure that they grew her knowledge through this whole process. And it really was amazing to see when we do it sort of as like kind of a workshop type deal, how much she's grown in her knowledge and now can actually like suggest things like taking advantage of new functionality, like the AI, all the AI features are starting to be included in Power BI. And now you can build reports that are more predictive, right? So we're building reports, and they're pretty much something you can use. It's more a it's telling me what it is right now. But now through the education and working with Belinda, it's been great to see her growth and to have her kind of go to that next level and start thinking really big about what are the types of things now I can start to forecast. Like now I know where I'm at today and I can get all of the numbers and things that I need to do so we can make financial decisions today. But what about if I go to this next level and start predicting when things are going to happen? Like when cash is going to come in, or when, hey, when does this vendor typically pay me? Do they, their payment terms are 6 weeks or, or 45 days. I'm talking in lead times instead of payment terms. So let me switch to the accounting payment terms. So like 45 days or something, but they typically pay in 60 days. So creating reports that we can actually make suggestions like, hey, you should charge these guys more. Like quit giving them this discount. They don't pay in 60 days or 45 days.
Yep. No, that's great. Belinda, what kind of opportunities have you seen that have opened up as a result of covering some of the basics and then being able to move beyond?
I think one big thing is the ability to take, for people who are doing the report work and the report design, to take what they have and move it across a bigger audience than they had intended, especially to C-level executives, because every persona in the company has a different need and a different thought process. And so allowing them to be able to produce content that is consumable to the person who it's intended for is quite the big deal, because C-levels think and very differently and want very differently and learn very differently than department heads, who are very different from someone in sales and marketing. Sales and marketing are just like, the Cookie Monster, more. They're about the only ones who are like that. When it comes to C-levels and department heads, oddly enough, they think very much the same, because neither one usually have experience in doing analysis, so they're not sure how to do it. And neither one are comfortable asking for help on analysis. So being able to provide something that makes sense for them is quite the big deal. Now, I'm not saying they get the same kind of content. When it comes to C-levels, now being able to use something like the SMART narratives we have, where they could just read a statement. So basically it's the same as getting an update from a meeting. That's something that kind of gets their juices flowing. They're like, oh, got it. Where the department heads, if you take it down to a relatable topic. So I'm going to go back to my career right out of college, which was the hotel business. An executive housekeeper is someone who really is good at managing a staff. They understand what it takes to get a room clean, and they understand what's involved in running the laundry part of it, which is a major part of it as well. And so being able to understand those things gives them no credentials for reading a chart or graph, or worse, looking at a financial statement, trying to figure out how to run their business. But when you bring it down to, look, let's talk about what it costs for every room we rent, then that's a relatable and understandable way for them to absorb the information. And by it's only because their skill set is highly specialized, and it just doesn't happen to be financial statements. That's just not a natural thing that most people get to. And I've run across very few people in my life, including CPAs, that could look at a financial statement and tell you right away on a 20-page statement, hey, you're missing the electricity and you're missing this number. And it's like, very few people have that ability. So, what can we do to help make that a little bit easier?
Yep. Fantastic. Well, those are all some great examples and things for people to think about that might apply with their businesses for projects with Power BI. One last chance to share something with the folks who are listening. Kim, what else would you like people to know about Power BI?
Wow. It's amazing. It's fun and all of those things. But on top of that, I think, just be thoughtful about how you start. Really make sure that you, as an organization, don't get too far down the road before you actually have a really good plan in place on how you're going to actually implement and how you're going to build that data structure. Because we have seen personally, that's the one thing that will kill adoption. Like if you get too many reports, too many data sets, the numbers are different. People will say, I don't like this, I don't trust it, and I'm not going to use it. So make sure you think about it before you actually start down that path.
Yeah, very good. Belinda, what are your parting thoughts for the group?
Well, I don't want people to get all wrapped up in just another source to get information from, because you're right, there are hundreds and hundreds of ways that you can extract information. But the cool thing about Power BI is that you can consume the data easily where you happen to be working, and that could be a different answer for everybody. So you could put your Power BI reports right inside of Business Central. So if you spend all your time in Business Central, you could look at your reports right there as a great reporting tool inside of Business Central. If you happen to be someone who spends most of your time in Teams, you can use Teams to consume your Power BI reports. And so that's a really easy thing to do. If you happen to be someone who spends time on the road, use your phone, use your iPad to consume your Power BI reports. So where you are and where you work, you can consume what you need to consume, and you could do it in a very consistent manner across all of that. And so it's worthwhile doing. And the last thing I want to mention is it doesn't just work by itself. I mean, aside from Business Central, you could bring in other applications that you might happen to be using in conjunction with your Business Central. Kim and I had a long conversation today about adding in some other applications, a tool similar to Microsoft that somebody uses. We want to be able to use that in conjunction with Business Central. So we're going to work on bringing some of those things together. And there's other elements to the Power Platform that it's part of that you could do that could still enhance your functionality inside of Business Central and with Power BI. So take advantage of all of it. It's like Microsoft is doing a great job. Like these are like Legos. They fit perfectly, right? Not Lincoln Logs with the little hat, but Legos. They fit nice and perfect.
I love that. Fantastic. Well, thank you guys so much for sharing what you know about Power BI with our listeners today. I know that I've really enjoyed hearing what you've had to say about that, and we'll see at some point in the future to talk more.
Okay.
All right. Thanks.
I'm Carrie Peters. Thank you for tuning in to the Get Your New View podcast. For more episodes like this on YouTube, click the subscribe button and ring the bell to ensure that you get notified whenever new content comes out. If you're listening to the audio podcast, please share an honest review on Apple Podcasts. If you are ready to rethink today for tomorrow, look for the link below and contact us to speak with our expert team. You won't find the level of no-nonsense real-world experience we offer anywhere else, and we're here to put that experience to work for you. Do you think you could use more features of your software if you just knew how? Are you frustrated with inefficiency that never seems to get better? Did your team ever really get good training to understand how to use your business software? Do you suspect there just has to be a better way and you don't know what it is? We believe every company can benefit from increased efficiency and higher utilization of their software, and that it's possible to have fun while learning exactly how to do that. The experts at NewView Strategies work with frustrated Business Central and NAV users who struggle to use their system and find the answers they need. We teach them to truly understand how the system can support their business processes to make immediate and lasting improvements. As a result, they get more done in less time, make better business decisions, and even love their system. Please contact us at getyournewview.com to get started.